Hi everybody, it's Precious Pioneer and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this segment, it's the Precious Pioneer Book Club, where I read books, take notes, and then share them with you to inspire you to pick one up. Today's book is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This book has taken the world by storm. His anecdotes tend to leave people so inspired to carry the boats, to run marathons, to stay hard, and push through all mental adversities. If you are going through something in your life or just want a restart button to persevere and dig down deep, I highly recommend reading this book. I'll break up my insights chapter by chapter, along the way sharing my insights and excerpts. If you end up reading the book and have any of your own, feel free to comment any of yours down below. Also, if you have any books that you'd like me to read and feature on this channel, feel free to reach out. But without further ado, let's get started. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. To the unrelenting voice in my head that will never allow me to stop. So the book opens with a warning order. It kind of looks like a 4-step plan that he signed off on and then encourages you to go ahead and try to create something similar, to acknowledge it and then take it as your own. So I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like. It's just kind of like a synopsis here. And it's saying time zone 24/7, task organization. It's a solo mission. Step 1, situation. You are in danger of living a life so comfortable and soft that you will die without realizing your true potential. 2, mission. To unshackle your mind, ditch the victim's mentality forever, own all aspects of your life completely, build an unbreakable foundation. 3, execution. Part A. Read this cover to cover. Study the techniques within it, accept all 10 challenges. Repeat. Repetition will callous your mind. Part B. If you do your job to the best of your ability, this will hurt. This mission is not about making yourself feel better. This mission is about being better and having a greater impact on the world. Part C. Don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done. 4. Classified. This is the origin story of a hero. The hero is you. By command of David Goggins, rank of service Chief U.S. Navy SEALs, retired. So this is kind of the blueprint and what to expect of the book. He kind of lays it out of like what he hopes for you, your intentions of this book. And honestly, I feel like he completed like the mission for all of us if you end up reading parts of it. So I'm going to go ahead and read the introduction. It's a couple of pages just so you can kind of get the tone of what this book is really trying to portray for you. Do you know who you really are and what you're capable of? I'm sure you think so, but just because you believe something doesn't make it true. Denial is the ultimate comfort zone. Don't worry, you aren't alone. In every town, in every country, all over the world, millions roam the streets, dead-eyed as zombies, addicted to comfort, embracing a victim's mentality and unaware of their true potential. I know this because I meet and hear from all of them all the time, and because just like you, I used to be one of them. I had a damn good excuse too. Life dealt me a bad hand. I was born broken, grew up with beatdowns, was tormented in school, and was called nigger more than I could count. We were once poor, surviving on welfare, living in government subsidized housing, and my depression was smothering. I lived life at the bottom of the barrel, and my future forecast was bleak as fuck. Very few people know how the bottom feels, but I do. It's like quicksand. It grabs you, sucks you under, and won't let go. When life is like that, it's easy to drift and continue to make some comfortable choices that are killing you, over and over again. But the truth is, we all make habitual, self-limiting choices. It's all natural as a sunset and as fundamental as gravity. It's how our brains are wired, which is why motivation is crap. Even the best pep talk or self-help hack is nothing but a temporary fix. It won't rewire your brain. It won't amplify your voice or uplift your life. Motivation changes exactly nobody. The bad hand that was my life was mine, and mine alone to fix. So I sought out pain, fell in love with suffering, and eventually transformed myself from the weakest piece of shit on the planet into the hardest man God ever created, or so I tell myself. Odds are, you had a much better childhood than I did, and even now might have a damn decent life. But no matter who you are, who your parents are or were, where you live, what you do for a living, or how much money you have, you're probably living on about 40% of your true capability. Damn shame. We all have the potential to be so much more. Years ago, I was invited to be on a panel at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I'd never set foot in a university lecture hall as a student. I'd barely graduated high school, yet I was one of the most prestigious institutions in the country to discuss mental toughness with a handful of others. At some point in the discussion, an esteemed MIT professional said that we each have genetic limitations, hard ceilings, that there are some things we just can't do no matter how mentally tough we are. When we hit our genetic ceiling, he said, mental toughness doesn't enter the equation. Everyone in the room seemed to accept his version of reality because this senior tenured professor was known for researching mental toughness. It was his life's work. It was also a bunch of bullshit, and to me he was using science to let all of us off the hook. I'd been quiet until then because I was surrounded by all these smart people, feeling stupid. But someone in the audience noticed that look on my face and asked if I agreed. And if you ask me a direct question, I won't be shy. There's something to be said for living it instead of studying it, I said, then turned toward the professor. What you said is true for most people, but not 100%. There will always be the 1% of us who are willing to put in the work to defy the odds. I went on to explain what I knew from experience, that anybody can become a totally different person and achieve what so-called experts like him claim is impossible, but it takes a lot of heart, will, and an armored mind. Heraclitus, a philosopher born in the Persian Empire back in the 5th century BC, had it right when he wrote men on the battlefield. Out of every 100 men, he wrote, 10 shouldn't even be there, 80 are just targets, 9 are the real fighters, and we're lucky to have them, for they make the battle. Ah, but the one is a warrior. From the time you take your first breath, you become eligible to die. You also become eligible to find your greatness and become the one warrior. But it is up to you to equip yourself for the battle ahead. Only you can master your mind, which is what it takes to live a bold life filled with accomplishments most people consider beyond their capability. I am not a genius like those professors at MIT, but I am that one warrior. And the story you're about to read, the story of my fucked up life, will illuminate a proven path to self-mastery and empower you to face reality. Hold yourself accountable, push past pain, learn to love what you fear, relish failure, live to your fullest potential, and find out who you really are. Human beings change through study, habit, and stories. Through my story, you will learn what the body and mind are capable of when they're driven to maximum capacity and how to get there. Because when you're driven, whatever it is in front of you, whether it's racism, sexism, injuries, divorce, depression, obesity, tragedy, or poverty, becomes fuel for your metamorphosis. The steps laid out here amount to the evolutionary algorithm, one that obliterates barriers, glimmers with glory, and delivers lasting peace. I hope you're ready. It's time to go to war with yourself. So I feel like the introduction really sets the tone for what this book truly embodies. I made an error to say it's almost motivational and inspirational. Sure, there are sentiments of that, but if you truly do the work within this book and then take the stories and embody them in your daily life, then they will change and actively move your life. It's not one of those self-help books of like, yeah, you can do it. It's more being accountable to your deepest fears, your goals, and actively building on all the different things that you want to accomplish in your life and how to get there, essentially. An overview of chapter 1. I should have been a statistic. David Goggins goes into detail about growing up and being abused as a kid. His mom also went through a similar abuse from his father. But basically, he goes into detail about his toxic family relationship and how he grew up struggling to read and struggled getting through school and passing his classes. When it boils down to it, he notices he has a bad hand. Like, this is the hand he was dealt at life. As a child, he didn't get to pick his parents, where he lived, the people he was surrounded by, and they were all shit, essentially. And so in this challenge in chapter 1, he calls everybody to reflect on what excuses, what bad hands were you given in life, what reasons block you or stop you from pursuing the person you want to become. Like what excuse like that is like, yeah, everybody can relate to, and we'll give you a pass for things that have happened in your life that are valid or seem valid to you, to pass up on goals or opportunities. And he encourages you to write them all down and reflect on them, because that's the first step. A lot of people don't know what those even are. Taking a look at chapter 2, Truth Hurts. In this stage, David Goggins is living through poverty. He has experienced a lot of trauma at this point, not only from his abusive father, but his soon-to-be stepdad gets murdered, and he witnesses that as a kid. He also sees a little boy get run over by a bus in 4K, and dealing with that kind of trauma. He lives in a small racist town as one of the few, if only, black kids there. Like the origins of the KKK kind of racist town. Going into high school, he's hitting like a rebellious stage. He's not doing very well in school. His pants are sagging. He's not dressed appropriate for school. His hair's all grown out and wild, but he knows he wants to join the Air Force to be a pararescue person, the people who jump out of the planes. And so he's working to like be in the Air Force. But one of his teachers or professors pulls him aside and just to let him know like, hey, you're flunking out. And upon reflection, he realized like he wouldn't be able to hit those goals or like even enter his pararescue like dream if he didn't even pass high school. So it's in this moment where he creates the accountability mirror. In this moment, he shaved his face, fixed his clothes, looked himself in the mirror, and started like giving himself like the hard truth about like how he was feeling. And so we're going to jump into that section in the book, page 66 and 67. After shaving peach fuzz from my cheeks and chin, I lathered up my scalp. I was desperate for change. I wanted to become someone new. You don't see people in the military sagging their pants. You need to stop talking like you want to be a gangster. None of this shit's gonna cut it. No more taking the easy way out. It's time to grow the fuck up. Steam billowed all around me. It rippled off my skin and poured from my soul. What started as a spontaneous venting session had become a solo intervention. It's on you, I said. Yeah, I know shit is fucked up. I know what you've been through. I was there, bitch. Merry fucking Christmas. Nobody is coming to save your ass. Not your mommy, not Wilma, nobody. It is up to you. By the time I was done talking, I was shaved clean. Water purled on my scalp, streaming across my forehead and dripped down the bridge of my nose. I looked different, and for the first time, I'd held myself accountable. A new ritual was born, one that stayed with me for years. It would help me get my grades up, whip my sorry ass into shape, and see me through graduation into the Air Force. The ritual was simple. I'd shave my face and scalp every night, get loud and get real. I set goals, wrote them on Post-its, and tagged them to what I now call the accountability mirror, because each day I hold myself accountable to the goals I set. At first, my goals involved shaping up my appearance and accomplishing all my chores without having to be said. Being asked. Make your bed like you're in the military every day. Pull up your pants. Shave your head every morning. Cut the grass. Wash all dishes. The accountability mirror kept me on point from then on, and though I was still young when this strategy came through me, since then I found it useful for people of any stage in life. You could be on the cusp of retirement, looking to reinvent yourself. Maybe you're going through a bad breakup or have gained weight. Perhaps you're permanently disabled, overcoming some other injury, or are just coming to grips with how much of your life you've wasted, living without purpose. In each case, that negativity you're feeling is your internal desire for change. But change doesn't come easy, and the reason this ritual worked so well for me was because of my tone. I wasn't fluffy. I was raw because that was the only way to get myself right. That summer between my junior and senior year in high school, I was afraid. I was insecure. I wasn't a smart kid. I'd blown off all accountability for my entire teenage existence and actually thought I was getting over on all the adults in my life, getting over on the system. I duped myself into a negative feedback loop of cheating and scamming that on the surface looked like achievement until I hit a brick fucking wall called reality. That night when I came home and read the letter from my school, there was no denying the truth, and I delivered it hard. So he encourages us to use the accountability mirror. It's a way to hold yourself accountable, from setting goals to shaping your appearance and getting shit done. No one likes to hear the truth, but you are what's holding you back. You're the one who's stopping you. And there's absolutely no more time to waste. Hours pass, days pass, like there's no more time. Every moment that you're contemplating, thinking about it back and forth, will evaporate and it continues to come and go. It's okay to be hard on yourself if you're continuing to push to be better. He continues, "From then on, I brainwashed myself into craving discomfort. If it was raining, I would go run. Wherever it started snowing, my mind would say, 'Get your fucking running shoes on.' Sometimes I wussed out and had to deal with it at the accountability mirror. But facing that mirror, facing myself, motivated me to fight through uncomfortable experiences, and as a result, I became tougher. And being tough and resilient helped me to meet my goals." So in the second challenge, he encourages you to get raw and to get real. Whatever your goal is, you'll need to hold yourself accountable for the small steps it will take to get there. Self-improvement takes dedication and self-discipline. The dirty mirror you see every day is going to reveal the truth. Stop ignoring it. Chapter 3, The Impossible Task. So at this point in David Goggins' life, he is working as an exterminator, killing bugs in restaurants in the midnight shift. He is about 300 pounds. This is his mindset during that time in his life. They say there's always light at the end of the tunnel, but not once your eyes adjust to the darkness. And that's what happened to me. I was numb to my life, miserable in my marriage, and I'd accept the reality. I was a wannabe warrior turned cockroach sniper on the graveyard shift. Just another zombie selling his time on Earth, going through the motions. In fact, the only insight I had into my job at the time was that it was actually a step up. In this stage, David Goggins was trying to pursue his career in the Air Force as a pararescue, but he needed to pass a swim test. And so in this time, he's telling anecdotes and stories of why he's in the position he got in after high school. He makes a note that he couldn't swim, and so during that time, he grabbed a bunch of swim books, tried to learn how to swim, but at the end of the day, he was not doing so well. He may pass like a few of the small challenges between the training to be able to get this certain qualification, but he was not doing well and was struggling the entire time. He explained how he wasn't buoyant and he would just sink, and as the challenges got harder, the fear in his mind continued to sink in and weigh on him and replay throughout his mind the entire time. Fortunately, in that stage, they took all the members and they took like blood tests, and he found out that he had the sickle cell trait. But during that time, they thought that carrying it, even if you have the trait of it, was just as bad as if you were an actual carrier. And so they dismissed him from completing his duties for this qualification, and then sent him off to do another job within the Air Force. And he describes the feeling like pretending to be like disappointed, like, oh shucks, like I didn't get it or whatever, but deep down he knew the truth. So let's look at some of his reflections. I moved on to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, told my friends and family that I was forced from the program on a medical, and served out my 4 years in the Tactical Air Control Party, which works with some special operation units. I trained to liaise between ground units and air support, fast movers like F-15s and F-16s behind enemy lines. It was challenging work with intelligent people, but sadly I was never proud of it and didn't see the opportunities offered because I knew I was a quitter who had let my fear dictate my future. I buried my shame in the gym and at the kitchen table. I got into powerlifting and layered on the mass. I ate and worked out and ate. In my last days in the Air Force, I weighed 255 pounds. After my discharge, I continued to bulk up with both muscle and fat until I weighed nearly 300 pounds. I wanted to be big because being big hid David Goggins. I was able to tuck this 175-pound person, into those 21-inch biceps and that flabby belly. I grew a burly mustache and was intimidating to everyone who saw me, but inside I knew I was a pussy, and that's a haunting feeling. So having left the military, disappointed for wussing out of like the swimming opportunity and the challenges that he faced to be able to get like his dream job, he's living his normal life as an exterminator. His mom is feeding him his typical really big breakfast, and he sits down on the couch and watches a seal commercial. And as he's watching it, he's getting more pumped. And so let's take a look about his thought process during that. The longer I watched, the more certain I became that there were answers buried in all that suffering, answers that I needed. More than once, the camera panned over the endless frothing ocean, and each time I felt pathetic. The seals were everything I wasn't. They were about pride, dignity, and the type of excellence that came from bathing in the fire, getting beat the fuck down, and going back for more again and again. They were the human equivalent of the hardest, sharpest sword you could imagine. They sought out the flame, took the pounding for as long as necessary, longer even, until they were fearless and deadly. They weren't motivated, they were driven. The show ended with graduation. 22 proud men stood shoulder to shoulder in their dress whites before the camera pushed in on their commanding officer. In a society where mediocrity is too often the standard and too often rewarded, he said, there is intense fascination with men who detest mediocrity, who refuse to define themselves in conventional terms, and seek to transcend traditionally recognized human capabilities. This is exactly the type of person Bud S. is meant to find. The man who finds a way to complete each and every task to the best of his ability. The man who will adapt and overcome any and all obstacles. In that moment, it felt as though the commanding officer was talking directly to me. But after the show ended, I walked back to the bathroom, faced the mirror, and stared myself down. I looked every bit of 300 pounds. I was everything all the haters back home said I would be. Uneducated, with no world skills, zero discipline, and a dead-end future. Mediocrity would have been a major promotion. I was at the bottom of the barrel of life, pulling in the dregs, but for the first time in way too long, I was awake. So at this point, Goggins is fired up. He's ready to make a change in his life. He's like, all right, I chickened out of the first one. Let me try to make something of myself. So he's trying to find a bunch of like recruiters who will take him, because he calls and they like dodge him, or they see him in person. They're like, nah, like, because he's 300 pounds. So he finally calls a recruiter who's like, all right, we can see if we can get you in, but you need to drop weight. And so that's when he's like, my task may turn out to be impossible, but at least I was back on a motherfucking mission. And so once the recruiter's like, you need to drop weight and don't forget to also study for the written exam, he's like, roger that. And for some reason, the Rocky soundtrack like inspires him, because, you know, he like runs up the hill and he goes, ah. So this is like what he listens to. He has the Rocky soundtrack on cassette. I've listened to it. I listened to Going the Distance for inspiration for his bike rides and runs. With those horns blasting in my brain, I'd imagine myself going through Bud S, diving into cold water, and crushing Hell Week. I was wishing, I was hoping, but by the time I was down to 250, my quest to qualify for the SEALs wasn't a daydream anymore. I had a real chance to accomplish something most people, including myself, thought it was impossible. And so he's like going through all this different training, and he realizes like there's no way that you can cut corners. Like if you're trying to get in, like there's no shortcuts. You just have to go through and get it done. Go through the pain, go through the hurt, lose the weight, and hit those goals to be even to like enter the doorway, to qualify for Hell Week training to get into the SEALs. At this point, he's continuing to eat right, reminding himself to go harder and push through. And deep down, he knew that he just wanted to be the best. Not only to pass, but to be the best. And the chapter ends, it's a It's a little sad, but he ended up making it in. But within making it in, he lost his wife. She just didn't see eye to eye with his goals. And so he says, I was a prisoner in my own mind, and this opportunity was my only chance to break free. And so he knew that doing what it took to accomplish what he needed to fulfill and find purpose in his life outweighed anything that someone could tell him at this stage. And he continues, all I knew was that there would be pain and there would be purpose, and that I was ready. And so in challenge 3, at the end of this chapter, he reflects and he says that the first step on the journey towards a callous mind and building up that mental fortitude is stepping outside your comfort zone on a regular basis. Use this time to make your weaknesses your strengths. If you feel like you're trapped, like you can't do something, pick at it, work on it each and every day, make yourself better. It's going to be uncomfy. Losing weight's never easy. Setting a new goal is never easy. Going for that promotion at work is never easy. Dealing with complicated relationships is never easy, but continuously step forward and work towards those things. Chapter 4, Taking Souls. This is probably one of my favorite chapters. I think it's just kind of funny, a little bit, but I think it's just cool. So Hell Week has started in David Goggins' life. He's passed. He made it into Hell Week. It's the typical sort of like Marines commercial or any sort of military film that you've ever seen. It's hard. It's brutal. There's some cadet person with a fancy hat with a whistle yelling at people to run harder, do push-ups in the rain. There's a storm in the water and they have to continue to march on and find their motivation. Some people quit. Some people fall in mud and he like picks them up. It's like any sort of cliche sort of action film you've ever seen. Needless to say, it's just really, really fucking hard. Throughout the whole process, he has to like contemplate and he's like digging deep, and a question kept ringing over and over and over again. It's like, why am I here? Why am I doing this again? Like, this sucks. I'm in pain. I don't sleep. My body's bruised up. Like, why am I here? But he takes a moment to explain why everything is mental. Why everything in life is a mental game. Everything in life is a mind game. Wherever we get swept under by life's dramas, large and small, we are forgetting that no matter how bad the pain gets, no matter how harrowing the torture, all bad things end. That forgetting happens the second we give control over our emotions and actions to other people, which can easily happen when pain is peaking. During Hell Week, the men who quit felt like they were running on a treadmill, turned way the fuck up with no dashboard within reach. But whether they ever figured it out or not, that was an illusion they fell for. I went into Hell Week knowing I put myself there, that I wanted to be there, and that I had all the tools I needed to win this fucked up game, which gave me the passion to persevere, claim ownership of the experience. It allowed me to play hard, bend the rules, and look for an edge wherever and whenever I could, until the horn sounded on Friday afternoon. To me, this was war, and the enemies were our instructors, who blatantly told us that they wanted to break us down and make us quit. Having their schedule in our heads would help us whittle the time down by memorizing what came next, and more than that, it would give us a victory going in, which would give us something to latch onto during Hell Week, when those motherfuckers were beating us down. So he's in this mindset, like the instructors are beating him down, and he's like, you know what, like I signed up for this, I knew what I'm getting into, it is what it is. But there's something beautiful about like acknowledging like this is what the pain is, and then there's someone who's trying to trip you up, set you up for failure, wanting you to quit. You know, there's something special about like proving them wrong. And so he calls this segment Taking Souls, which is when someone gets off on bringing people down, like a coach or an instructor, and you get them back by surpassing their expectations and like killing it. So like in some example where like he's working out really hard and they're like, oh yeah, you beat that time? Well, you know what? Do an extra 15 laps just for fun. And he's like, okay. And he does it and they're like, whoa, you know, it's that kind of like you're taking the put down back to a point where they kind of are just like, oh shit, they're shocked almost. And they're like, okay, whatever, you win, sort of like mentality. So let's read a little bit about like his philosophy behind this. Since that night in Hell Week, I've deployed the taking souls concept countless times. Taking souls is a ticket to finding your own reserve power and riding a second wind. It's the tool you can call upon to win any competition or overcome every life obstacle. You can utilize it to win a chess match or conquer an adversity in a game of office politics. It can help you rock a job interview or excel at school, and yes, it can be used to conquer all manners of physical challenges. But remember, this is a game you are playing within yourself. Unless you're engaged in a physical competition, I'm not suggesting that you try to dominate someone or crush their spirit. In fact, they never even need to know you're playing this game. This is a tactic for you to be your best when duty calls. It's a mind game you're playing on yourself. Taking someone's soul means you've gained a tactical advantage. Life is all but looking for tactical advantages, which is why we stole the Hell Week schedule, why we snipped Psycho's heels on that run, and why I made a show of myself in the surf, humming the platoon theme song. Each of these incidents was an act of defiance that empowered us, but defiance isn't always the best way to take someone's soul. It all depends upon your terrain. During Bud S, the instructors didn't mind if you looked for advantages like that. They respected it as long as you were also kicking ass. You must do your own homework. Know the terrain you're operating in, when and where you can push boundaries, and when you should fall in line. Next, take inventory of your mind and body on the eve of battle. List your insecurities and weaknesses as well as your opponents. For instance, if you're getting bullied and you know you fall short or feel insecure, you can stay ahead of any insults or barbs a bully may throw your way. You can laugh at yourself along with them, which disempowers them. If you take what they do or say less personally, they no longer hold any cards. Feelings are just feelings. On the other hand, people who are secure within themselves don't bully other people. They look out for other people. So if you're getting bullied, you know that you're dealing with someone who has a problem in areas you can exploit or soothe. Sometimes the best way to defeat a bully is to actually help them. If you can think 2 or 3 moves ahead, you will commandeer their thought process. And if you do that, you've taken their damn soul without them realizing it. Our SEAL instructors were our bullies, and they didn't realize the games I was playing during that week to keep boat crew 2 sharp. And they didn't have to. I imagine that they were obsessed with our exploits during Hell Week, but I don't know that for sure. It was a ploy I used to maintain my mental edge and helped our crew prevail. In the same way, if you're up against a competitor for a promotion and you know where you fall short, you can shape up your game ahead of your interview or evaluation. In that scenario, laughing at your weaknesses won't solve the problem. You must master them. In the meantime, if you are aware of your competitor's vulnerabilities, you can spin those to your advantage. But all of that takes research. Again, know the terrain, know yourself, and you'd better know your adversity in detail. Once you're in the heat of battle, it comes down to staying power. If it's a difficult physical challenge, you will probably have to defeat your own demons before you can take your opponent's soul. That means rehearsing answers to the simple question that is sure to rise up like a thought bubble. Why am I here? If you know that moment is coming and you have your answer ready, you will be equipped to make the split-second decision to ignore your weakened mind and keep moving. Know why you're in the fight, to stay in the fight. And so I found this section really insightful, because whether you're running or doing something, like, there's always that little voice that wants you to quit because you're tired and you're not sure like how to keep going. And he's like, as soon as you have that question of like, why am I doing this? This sucks. Like, can I stop? And then that question of why you're doing it just pops in, like, no, I can't stop because I blah, blah, blah. No, but because of this. Like, if you have that answer ready to go, it will help you persevere and complete any challenge that you set for yourself. He continues, the hard part is getting to that point, because the ticket to victory often comes down to bringing your very best when you feel your very worst. And so that's the key. Like, if it was easy, anybody could do it. So when you're healthy, mentally stimulated, inspired, you feel good, you look great, it's easy to get shit done. It's when times are hard, when you're mentally fatigued, when you're a little bit sleepy, it's like those little excuses of like whatever it may be, that's when a lot of people give up. So it's doing all the things that you need to do despite those things is where he kind of rings true in this chapter. So he challenges yourself to go against all odds to be the best of the best in whatever you're doing. And it'll help you distance yourself from the pack, from mediocrity. To be the best, you got to do the best every time, day in, day out. And over time, you'll separate yourself. It's like the Kobe effect. Kobe once said that, like, if you work yourself, if at the end of the day you can reflect and you're like, did I get a little bit better each day? If it's no, then go back and like do something to better yourself each day. If the answer is yes, every day, then over time the distance between you and others will grow. The distance between you two will grow by the day, by the year, by a span of years. And like, that's what makes the difference. That's how to achieve greatness. Like, those are the little elements. Goggins reflects and he's like, I went from a 297-pound dude who couldn't even run a quarter mile, dreaming of a better life. But he didn't just complete Hell Week. He'd finish in the top of his class. And his final notes are to be the best, do more than expected, do more for yourself, give it your all. Okay, chapter 5, An Armored Mind. So in this stage, David Goggins, he's got some knee problems. It's swollen, it's bruised, it's puffy. It's like looking real rough, real bleak. And he still has his underwater challenge where he has to tie a bunch of knots underwater. His instructor's being a dickhead. He's being real tough on him. He even coined his name Psycho because he just like makes challenges brutally hard for no apparent reason at all. And his instructor's on this weird power trip. So this is a reflection of him struggling. I remember my very first day in the gym back in Indiana. My palms were soft and quickly got torn up on the bars because they weren't accustomed to gripping steel. But over time, after thousands of reps, my palms built up a thick callus as protection. The same principle works when it comes to mindset. Until you experience hardships like abuse and bullying, failures and disappointments, your mind will remain soft and exposed. Life experience, especially negative experiences, help callous the mind, but it's up to you where the callus lines up. If you choose to see yourself as a victim of circumstance into adulthood, that callus will become resentment that protects you from the unfamiliar. It will make you too cautious and untrusting and possibly too angry at the world. It will make you fearful of change and hard to reach, but not hard of mind. That's where I was as a teenager. But after my second Hell Week, I'd become someone new. I'd fought through so many horrible situations by then and remained open and ready for more. My ability to stay open represented a willingness to fight for my own life, which allowed me to withstand hailstorms of pain and use it to callous over my victim's mentality. That shit was gone, buried under layers of sweat and hard fucking flesh. And I was starting to callous over my fears too. That realization gave me the mental edge I needed to outlast Psycho Pete one more time. To show him he couldn't hurt me anymore, I smiled back, and the feeling of being on the edge of a blackout went away. Suddenly I was energized, the pain faded, and I felt like I could stay under all day. Psycho saw that in my eyes. I tied off the last knot at a leisurely pace, glaring at him the whole time. He gestured with his hands for me to hurry up as his diaphragm contracted. I finally finished. He gave me a quick affirmation and kicked to the surface, desperate for a breath. I took my time, joined him topside, and found him gasping while I felt strangely relaxed. When the chips were down at the pool during Air Force pararescue training, this time I won a major battle in the water. It was a big victory, but the war wasn't over. So Hell Week continues. He's struggling, he's fighting through, he has some small victories, but he's really like struggling to like maintain like the ferocity like throughout this entire challenge. Like, his spirit is there, but his body is literally breaking down. He tries to keep upbeat by saying things like, remember, you've been through difficulties before and you've survived to fight again, this sort of thing. You can take on new achievements, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, the reason it's important to push hardest when you want to quit the most is because it helps you callous your mind. In the same way why you have to do your best work when you feel least motivated. So it's kind of just like, fuck how you feel, get the job done, is what he's feeling. But at the end of the day, he ended up splitting his legs in two and was sent home. He didn't quit. He says that failure is a part of life. But he left the second week with a lot of questions on his mind, because this is the second time he's gone through it. He's worked so hard. He's gotten this far, and yet he still failed. His body like failed him, not his spirit. So that must be like a really challenging like milestone and point in his life. He even leaves a note saying, "There's no shame in getting knocked out. The shame comes when you throw in the motherfucking towel. And if I was born to suffer, then I may as well take my medicine." So he has a pretty upbeat attitude with the overall thing. I think he leaves with a lot of questions because he doesn't know whether he can qualify to try again, even though his like legs broke, like the doctor just sent him home. But it turns out he can. His recruiter or person called him back and he's like, "Listen, you got one more chance, one more shot. And if you get injured again, you can't reapply. Like, this is your last and only opportunity." And so taking in that news, he was casually back with his ex-wife. They weren't like together, but they were fooling around, and she announces that she got pregnant. It's also the stage in his life when he's in like $30,000 in credit card debt. So he's just like trying to figure out who he is, trying to get into the career of his dreams. His body's breaking down. He's got no money and a kid on the way, and he just like breaks down and has a heart-to-heart with his mom. And he realized that his mom's like encouraging, like, yo, you know, you'll find your way through this. And he's like, I literally have no choice. Like, I have to make this work. Essentially, it's like rock bottom, and like the epiphany that like the only way left is up. You know, like, I have to get out of this pit by myself. And as he looked at himself in the mirror, he realized it's not even about him anymore. Like, there are people that depend on him to be successful now. So let's look at some of his sentiments. By then, I'd learned how to hold myself accountable, and I knew I could take a man's soul in the heat of battle. I had overcome many obstacles and realized that each of those experiences had calloused my mind so thick I could take on any challenge. All of that had made me feel like I dealt with my past demons, but I hadn't. I'd been ignoring them. My memories of abuse at the hands of my father, of all those people who called me nigger, didn't vaporize after a few victories. Those moments were anchored deep in my subconscious, and as a result, my foundation was cracked. And a human being, your character is your foundation, and when you build a bunch of successes and pile up even more failures on a fucked up foundation, the structure that is the self won't be sound. To develop an armored mind, a mindset so callous and hard that it becomes bulletproof, you need to go to the source of all your fears and insecurities. It's in this moment he realized that he never really addressed a lot of the traumas and hardships that he dealt with in his life, and in many ways he was living life overcompensating for a lot of them. And he goes on to say, I was rejecting my past and therefore rejecting myself. And then I was thinking along the lines like, denial of your fears is denial of yourself. And he was like, I still have trouble accepting me. And I thought that was really relatable. And so it's all this that he took with him, trying to heal himself and like go into the next hell week with an open mind and a new spirit, dealing with his past traumas and like working towards something that was bigger than himself. And so he's back in Hell Week. It's still super hard. He's swimming, jumping, running, doing all the things, but his legs aren't fully healed after breaking. So he's just really pushing through a lot of pain, wrapping them, trying to take care of them each and every day, because at the end of the day, he can't quit on an injury or he'll never be able to enter this career field. So he's just doing the exact same challenges, if not harder, because it's his third time around on fractured legs. He says, and this was just the first run in what promised to be 5 months of continual pain. Was it possible to survive this day after day? I thought about quitting. If failure was my future and I'd have to rethink my life completely, what was the point of this exercise? Why delay the inevitable? Was I fucked in the head? Each and every thought boiled down to the same old question, why? The only way to guarantee failure is to quit right now, motherfucker. I was talking to myself now, silently screaming over the din of anguish that was crushing my mind and soul. Take the pain, or it won't just be your failure, it will be your family's failure. So it's harder now because it's not only carrying his own weight, but he's carrying the weight of his family, which could be more inspiring or could be heavier for the loss. But with each step in the process, he pushed himself so much so that he was almost enjoying it. He changed his perspective and saw each painful step as a step forward, as a step towards moving, as one step that was better than everybody else, because nobody else was walking around on broken limbs. So any step that he could take was a step above. And he kept telling himself that, repeating it back over and over. He was using all of these words and all of these things, these actions, as fueling the fire to conquer and like persevere. And he makes it through. He wins. He passes. He gets to be a Navy SEAL. So yay, we've reached this like arc of this story. And so we're moving on to chapter 6, which is, it's not about a trophy. In this stage, we are plopped in the middle of David Goggins suddenly deciding to run an ultra marathon. He signs up for an ultra in San Diego where he has to run 100 miles in 24 hours. And we're just like, wow. As a reader, we're just like, wow, this is really random. How did this happen? And we're like, okay, you're a marathon runner now. And then suddenly we realize very quickly, like, oh, you're not. You're just doing anything because he goes that like he got a pacer the night before, like to track his pace. And he's like, oh, he's reflecting and goes, oh, I think I started running a little bit too fast. Like a lot of people out the gate started like jogging or trotting, and he's out there sprinting like boom, boom, boom. I'm about to run this 100 miles real quick. And then he also mentions that he didn't sleep very well the night before. He didn't really eat anything. He's just out there for vibes. And then I like his writing style where he like plops you somewhere and you're like, huh? And then he does a flashback of like how he even got there in the first place. And so originally he wanted to run for the Badwater race, which is 135 miles. And when veterans or military people run that, he wanted to run for a cause. And then by completing that race, like he'll earn money to give back for like military families in need and that kind of thing. But there's a pre-qualifier to enter Badwater, and you need to apply first. Kind of like the Boston Marathon and like the New York one, you need certain prerequisites. They're not just letting anybody run that. So he'd never run an ultra before, which is one of the prerequisites. And one of the recruiters is like, well, haha, there's only 1 or 2 left before our competition. There's one on 100 miler on Sunday. Go ahead and knock yourself out. He says it like sarcastically. And then Goggins is like, yeah, I'll do it. Never ran in ever. And like, because his legs were broken, he hadn't run even a mile in the last like 6 months. Yeah, he's like, okay, sounds good to me. And so he just literally the next day signs up and is suddenly out there running this ultra. But he actually did a lot well than I feel like most people would for not running a marathon ever or training ever for not even 6 months prior. His body didn't start to break down until mile 50. But essentially he ate poorly. He wanted to give up. His body's breaking down. There's urine and blood running down his legs. Like he's hobbling about. He takes a little 10-minute break with his new wife, Kate, yeah, his new wife, Kate. And yeah, he's in just pain. Pain is the word. A lot of pain. 50 miles in, 50 miles to go, and his body is not doing so great. And so he's thinking like, the engine in a rocket ship does not fire without a small spark first. We all need small sparks, small accomplishments in our lives to fuel the big ones. Think of your small accomplishments as kindling. When you want a bonfire, you don't start by lighting a big log. You collect some witch's hair, a small pile of hay, or some dry, dead grass. You light that, then add small sticks, bigger sticks, before you feed your tree stump into the blaze. Because it's the small sparks which start small fires that eventually build enough heat to burn the whole fucking forest down. If you don't have any big accomplishments to draw on yet, so be it. Your small victories are your cookies to savor, and make sure you do savor them. Yeah, I was hard on myself when I looked in the accountability mirror, but I also praised myself whenever I could claim a small victory, because we all need that, and very few of us take the time to celebrate our successes. Sure, in the moment we might enjoy them, but do we ever look back on them and feel the win again? Maybe that sounds narcissistic to you, but I'm not talking about droning on and bullshitting about the glory days here. I'm not suggesting you crawl up your own ass and bore your friends with all your stories about what a badass you used to be. Nobody wants to hear that shit. I'm talking about utilizing past successes to fuel you new and bigger ones. Because in the heat of battle, when shit gets real, we need to draw inspiration to push through our own exhaustion, depression, pain, and misery. We need to spark a bunch of small fires to become the motherfucking inferno. And so this is like his like commentary as he's like, I need to dig inside this cookie jar because like ain't no way I got 50 more miles to go, and I'm already bleeding and cramping up, and my toe's about to fall off, and shit's not looking too good. But Goggins being Goggins, he dug down deep, and it wasn't like a trophy for him. He already knew what he had in mind. Like, it wasn't about finishing the first or like finishing the fastest. He just wanted to complete it. That way he can meet the prerequisite for his other challenges for Badwater. So he ended up completing 101 miles at the end of his like pep talk, and then went straight to the ER. 101 miles with no prep says a lot about someone. He just like really dug deep, and his body went through the ringer. Which brings us to chapter 7, the most powerful weapon. A few days after finishing the race, he submitted his request to the Badwater recruiter, and the Badwater recruiter's like, hey, like having one race on your application is great, good job, whatever, do better, do more. And then David Goggins is like, all right, so I guess I have to fluff it up a little bit and like do some more things in my accolades to be able to complete at Badwater. But as he was doing that, more questions like brewed up inside of him, and he's like, okay, like if I could run 101 miles with no preparation, no water, no training, no nothing, like what am I truly capable of? Like, what can I really do if I put my mind to it? Because that was some crazy stuff that I just did, which if you think about it, it really is. You know, that's like a couple marathons in one day with not even training for one marathon, you know? And he's like, if I can do that and I didn't die, what else can I do? And he's having all these little reflections. And then he comes to the realization, he comes with this like deep realization that you don't have to be prepared to start. And I feel like a lot of people have like a lot of roadblocks or reasons why they can't start anything. And he's like, you don't have to be an expert, a professional, or anything to at least get started. You can just jump in head first, learn some things, and then try again and get better. So as he comes to this realization, this is where he comes up with his 40% rule, or philosophy that David Goggins is really well known for. Sadly, most of us give up when we've only given about 40% of our maximum effort. Even when we feel like we've reached our absolute limit, we still have 60% more to give. That's the governor in action. Once you know that to be true, it's simply a matter of stretching your pain tolerance, letting go of your identity and all of your self-limiting stories so you can get to 60%, then 80%, and beyond without giving up. I call this the 40% rule. And the reason it's so powerful is that if you follow it, you will unlock your mind to new levels of performance and excellence in sports and in life. And your reward will run far deeper than mere material success. The 40% rule can be applied to everything we do, because in life, almost nothing will turn out exactly as we hope. There are always challenges, and whether we are at work or school or feeling tested within our most intimate or important relationships, we will all be tempted to walk away from commitments, give up on our goals and dreams, and sell our own happiness short at some point, because we will feel empty, like we have no more to give, when we haven't tapped even half of the treasure buried deep in our minds, hearts, and souls. I know how it feels to be approaching an energetic dead end. I've been there too, many times to count. I understand the temptation to sell short, but I also know that impulse is driven by your mind's desire for comfort, and it's not telling you the truth. It's your identity trying to find sanctuary, not help you grow. It's looking for status quo, not reaching for greatness or seeking wholeness, but the software update you need to shut your governor down is no supersonic download. It takes 20 years to gain 20 years of experience. And the only way to move beyond your 40% is to callous your mind day after day, which means you'll have to chase pain like it's your damn job. And I think the main reflection that he's trying to like emphasize there, with every failure, there's something to be gained. So you might as well try. I feel like the true losers, or the true people that are stuck in mediocrity, are too scared to even try. And with every test and every attempt, there's a lesson there. And the most inspiring thing of it all is that only you know what that 40% limit is, that 60% limit is, that 80% limit. Like, only you have the strength and the internal dialogue to be able to test those things. Nobody else will know. So it's always a battle between you versus you. Like, how much are you willing to go? Like, what are you truly capable? What are you willing to do to get where you need to go or want to go? Because it's all up to you. And you don't always have to listen to the tiny voice in your head. Sometimes you can actually plan and move forward in the direction you want by small incremental steps. But acknowledging is the first step. He makes a point to even say, like, when you're on this journey, oftentimes you do it alone, and that kind of sucks, but it's your journey to walk. And you'll become immune to suffering when you refuse to quit. When you're deep down so determined that no matter what happens, the highs, the lows, the ebbs and flows, like, you're gonna get it done no matter what, then suddenly everything else is relative and nothing can really faze you, because you'll continue to persevere and move forward. It's also important to take notes of your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Acknowledge them, because they're a part of you. And that's the only way that you can overcome them. If you don't address them and ignore them, then they'll just stay where they are. But he makes a point to say, make your weaknesses your strengths, strengthen them. And that's your best bet. There's a bunch of little one-liners that I really love throughout the book. Another one being, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. And so my coaches, growing up playing sports my whole life, in track, that was the biggest thing that our coaches would always say, that poor preparation leads to poor performance day in, day out. It's one of those things you want to do on repetition every single day, so much so that you can do it with your eyes closed, blindfolded, sleepy, tired, whatever. Your body is such habitually used to being under the brunt of work and training. Even when it's rainy, cloudy, you're tired, you're still going to perform at that level, if not better. And so he's running bad water and going through all the motions, same old. And he says that he wanted to quit 30 times. It's crazy because nobody can see the mental dialogue that you're having in your head. So the fact that he's man, I want to quit over 30 times throughout the entire span of the 135-mile race, but still managed to come in 5th out of the 90 competitors that day, just goes to show that the internal dialogue means everything. From the great to the people who are greater, and from the good to the exceptional. At the end of the day, if we can sum down this book as we're coming to a close, the true message is to dig deep and be curious and wonder how far are you willing to go. And once you come to terms about what that is, push to get there and push to get better. It doesn't have to be in a span of a day, but just get there. Doesn't matter how fast, as long as you get there. And so we've reached chapter 8. Talent is not required. In this stage of the book, Goggins is starting a triathlon because he's just doing all the things, and he notices that talent really isn't required for this sport. He's looking around, everybody has different career fields, backgrounds, life stories, and he's like, you don't need to be talented to be a triathlon person. It's all about the training and how much work you're willing to put in to get through it, essentially. And he says you can accomplish quite a lot with just sheer will alone. But in hindsight of this race, you'll get a lot further through planning and preparation. He made a couple stumbles with his running, and he had some issues with his bike, because he's just a very much yeah, let's wake up and do this activity kind of day person. This is the first time where he kind of admits a little bit dang, if I would have come a little bit prepared, I could have performed a lot better. And I feel there's ebbs and flows, a push and pull with this kind of mentality, because some people don't even start, but they're super prepared. Before running, they'll know what shoes you need, what gear you need, what clothes, what hats, how to run properly, technique, how far, how to get the most efficient heart rate, all these things. And it can be so overwhelming that they don't even start. They don't even run a mile. They don't even get out the door. On the other hand, there's people like David Goggins who are like, let's run 100 miles today, and is in the ER. So maybe there's like a happy balance between actively pursuing that action by just getting out there and just giving it a go, but then also a little bit of like planning. That way you're like, okay, maybe I do need proper shoes so I don't hurt myself, or maybe I won't start off sprinting in an ultra marathon and I should look up, what general paces I should be at, that kind of thing, what food I might need to eat. Because Ritz crackers probably isn't like the best, So these little things could help nuance the conversation. And so he continues and says, anybody could change their life so long as they kept an open mind, abandoned the path of least resistance, and sought out the difficult and most challenging tasks they could find. And so that's his whole philosophy, to not always be uncomfortable, but seek out uncomfortable things, because that's where you'll grow the most. And he goes to say, you never know who you're inspiring just by living your life, so you might as well do your best. He says also that work ethic is the most important factor to the majority, if not all, of his accomplishments. It starts off small by winning your mornings. Take control of your mornings. Audit your 24 hours in the day and take them on like a mission, even when you're at work, which I thought was interesting, because like most of us go to work for 8 hours a day, maybe a 9 to 5, and like we waste time like fluttering with emails or whatever. But what if we actually utilized our time properly to be able to like give our own self breaks, or like fill in different moments where we could utilize the time to move forward our own goals? I think that would be a really cool way to like look at it. But his biggest thing is like, take control of your 24 hours, because you have a lot more time than you think that you do. A lot of the time is just being wasted doing frivolous things. So just be accountable for the time that you do have to fit in the things that actually matter to you. And no, it's a lifestyle change, not a trend. He makes it a point to say that life is an endurance sport within itself. Train to move forward no matter what. The chapter goes on and he goes to the doctor and he finds out that he had a hole in his heart this whole time. He did all that and he had a hole in his heart. And he's like, dang, lucky is like his thought. But then also like upon like more information, he realized that he was getting half the amount of oxygen that most people do. And so the fact that he could accomplish all of that and still have like medical issues should be like the blueprint of like, y'all really don't got any excuses not to do what you want to do. Because I'm out here with a broken heart running ultra marathons and running on broken legs, like with a traumatic past and upbringing. What do you got going on that you can't, hit your goals? So I think that's really where he's coming from here. Let's jump into that moment. I had a fucking hole in my heart. I was running on a tank perpetually half full, and that meant my life was absolute proof of what's possible when someone dedicates themselves to harnessing the full power of the human mind. 3 days later, I was in surgery. So he ended up having 2 heart surgeries, and boom, we're in chapter 9. Chapter 9, the uncommon amongst the uncommon. So here, Goggins is with a bunch of other crew members, and he's not really like one to be super social, like get fucked up with the crew and like hang out after work and like bond and stuff like that. He's like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm gonna focus on my own shit because I've got certain milestones to hit. Y'all do you. And then his instructor's like, you know what? You'd probably be a lot better off if you actually like you'd rub people not the wrong way if you actually like interacted with them. And he's just like, that doesn't make any sense. Why do I have to sacrifice my time to like connect with other individuals in this moment when that's not my goal this is not the time or place? And he goes to say that like the uncommon versus the uncommon are the people who are training when everybody's sleeping. My dad used to say the same thing. He's like, you can be getting better, and like the more that you practice, like everybody else, your competition's on the couch. And that little small difference could always set you above the edge. And so he goes to say like there's always going to be pushback for being different or standing out among the crowd. And that's okay, because you're not trying to be like everybody else. He goes on to Ranger School, which is a really cool opportunity, and this is where he hones in and truly changes his mentality a little bit from like, I'm different and I'm better and I'm stronger and I'm tougher and fiercer than all you guys, to like becoming more of a leader. And it's like, you know what, I may be all those things that I said, but let me pull up a couple people with me so y'all are on the same mentality. And so he brings not only himself up to a new level, but he learns how to like accommodate his team so that they can rise to that level as well, which is like the foundation of true leadership. So let's check in. A true leader stays exhausted, abhors arrogance, and never looks down on the weakest link. He fights for his men and leads by example. That's what it's meant to be uncommon amongst uncommon. It meant being one of the best and helping your men find their best too. It was a lesson I'd wish sunk in a lot deeper, because in just a few more weeks, I'd be challenged in the leadership department and come up, well, short. Throughout, like some liners that like resonated with me is that we're either getting better or we're getting worse. It's about what we do with the opportunities revoked or presented to us that determine how your story ends. And at the end of the day, if you can't change what's around you, it's up to you to decide how you'll handle it. So it's one of those things like, I don't know if you've ever seen the meme of the guy on the train who's like staring outside and it's raining. He's all sad, and the other guy's on the side of the train and it's like a wall and he's like smiling. It's like you can get two shitty sticks at the end of the day, but it's like how you perceive it is like how well your life will be. You know, and in the challenge for chapter 9, because remember it's like an overall mission is how the book is broken down, he just challenges everybody to go out there and be great. And he goes to say, greatness is not something that if you meet it once, it stays with you forever. That shit evaporates like a flash of oil in a hot pan. If you truly want to become uncommon amongst the uncommon, it will require sustaining greatness for a long period of time. It requires staying in constant pursuit and putting out unending effort. This may sound appealing, but will require everything you have to give and then some. Believe me, this is not for everyone because it will demand singular focus and may upset the balance in your life. Continue to put obstacles in front of yourself because that is where you'll find the friction that will help you grow even stronger. Before you know it, you will stand alone. I honestly find that to be a really great testament because I think in many ways he's right. A lot of people aren't willing to do the extra work it takes to be great. But by you making it your personal challenge to do that, like you'll just stand alone amongst millions. And it's a pretty cool resolve to know that like despite against all the odds, you still persevered and like did the very best that you could to achieve greatness and whatever greatness looks like to you. But now we're in chapter 10, the empowerment of failure. In this stage of David Goggins' life, he is trying to be the world record for the most amount of pull-ups, and I believe it's 4,200. And so he's trying to raise money. A lot of these crazy adventure things that he does is to raise money for a good cause, which I think is actually really cool. But he makes it a big deal. He's like, yo, I've got this in the bag. Like, everybody come support me. We're about to put some money in the bank. I'm going to go on live television. Let's get NBC on the deal. So he goes and joins this morning show. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And then afterward, we'll grab something to eat. Like, the host on the show. And he's like, yeah, I got this. But it doesn't go so well. He gets like 2,000 reps in and he's like, ow, my hands hurt, they're swollen, my body's shutting down. There's like trainers rubbing his shoulders and stuff. Because there's a time limit, I believe. Like you need to hit a certain amount in a certain amount of time. And he essentially breaks down and he couldn't like do any more. And it was just awkward because he failed in front of millions of people on live television. There was no celebration, no clapping, no nothing. It just kind of like was like, oh, okay. And then they moved on and that was it. And it was a really cool reflection moment for him because he's like, you know, like a lot of people after they fail, they'll come up with a bunch of excuses like, this grip wasn't right and I should have did this and blah, 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 blah. He actually kind of just owns up to his failure and is like, you know what, like, well, let's try again. And so he meets this other, like this boxing club, does a little bit more research and like does the handles on the squat racks to make sure that they're balanced and all these other things. Puts on some new gloves. Some people come out and support. And then he fails again, which is just like, dang, that's awkward. And so he's like, all right, well, because like the doctor at the time, like his gloves or whatever were like sewn onto his hands and they were bleeding so bad. And the doctor or whatever is just like, nah, I don't think you should continue. So they like, kind of just left, snuck out the back, and they're like, all right, peace, we failed again. But he goes to say, life goes on and it's up to you to challenge yourself. And he's like, I set this challenge, so I'm going to complete it. And on the third time, he does it. and does a great job, and that's that. And they're cue the Rocky music and he's like, only you have the power to make a change. And then suddenly we're in chapter 11, the last chapter, and the question is, what if is what the sentiment he leaves for us. And he's like, he's doing the frozen otter challenge and he's struggling because it's cold. And so this is like his mind at the moment. I was the sum total of the obstacles I'd overcome. Even though I told my story to students all over the country, I never stopped long enough to appreciate the tale I told or the life I built. In my mind, I didn't have the time to waste. I never hit snooze on my life clock because there was always something else to do. If I worked a 24-hour day, I'd work out for an hour and sleep for 3, but I made sure to get that motherfucker in. My brain wasn't wired to appreciate. It was programmed to do work, scan the horizon, and ask what's next, and get it done. That's why I piled up so many rare feats. I was always on the hunt for the next big thing, but as I lay there in bed, my body taut with tension and throbbing with pain, I had a clear idea of what was next for me, the cemetery. After years of abuse, I'd finally shredded my physical body beyond repair. I was dying. And he's going through these like really tough moments where his body's shutting down and his mind is just like losing its shit. And he reflects and he goes, I've lived in fear and doubt, terrified of being a nobody and contributing nothing. I judge myself constantly and I judge everyone else around me too. Rage is a powerful thing. And he reflects on all the anger that he's built out throughout the years, like just from his own personal trauma and working through that. It was just like, it's like, I feel like when you're on life or death moments, you kind of have a moment to reflect on all the things that are going on in your life. And so this is his moment here. And he goes, I released myself and everyone I ever knew from any and all guilt and bitterness. The long list of haters, doubters, racists, and abusers that populated my past, I just couldn't hate them anymore. I'd appreciated them because they helped create me. And as that feeling stretched out, my mind quieted down. I'd been fighting a war for 38 years, and now, at what looked and felt like the very end, I found peace. In this life, there are countless trails of self-realization, though most demand intense discipline, so few take them. And he says, I don't know if you could call what I felt on that bed enlightenment, but I do know that pain unlocks a secret doorway in the mind, one that leads to both peak performance and beautiful silence. But when you persist past that to the point that pain fully saturates the mind, you become single-pointed. The external world zeroes out. And so he's thinking about like all of the different things that led him to this point and like how you could get there, just like owning and being at peace with who you are as a person, the good, bad, the ugly, and pushing through, figuring that out, and accomplishing whatever it is that you want in life. All that to say, he was feeling very sick in this moment because he needed to stretch. He was not a big stretcher. And it turns out stretching actually helped like his muscles a lot for all the different random like ultras and intense training exercises he was doing. So being able to rest his muscles properly and like use them in the way that they were being used and actually start preparing for a lot of these like stints ended up being a lot beneficial for his health, like moving forward. And so some of the last thoughts that he has bringing a close to this book is, we are inspired to make changes little by little, and it hurts. Breaking the shackles and stretching beyond our own perceived limits takes hard fucking work, oftentimes physical work. And when you put yourself on the line, self-doubt and pain will greet you with a stinging combination that will buckle your knees. Most people who are merely inspired or motivated will quit at that point, and upon their return, their cells will feel that much smaller, their shackles even tighter. The few who remain outside their walls will encounter even more pain and much more doubt, courtesy of those who we thought were our biggest fans. When it's time for me to lose 106 pounds in less than 3 months, everyone I talked to told me there was no way I could do it. Don't expect too much, they all said. Their weak-ass dialogue only fed my own self-doubt. But it's not the external voice that will break you down. It's what you tell yourself that matters. The most important conversation you'll ever have are the ones you'll have with yourself. You wake up with them, you walk around with them, you go to bed with them, and eventually you act on them, whether they are good or bad. What if is an acquisition fuck you to anyone who has ever doubted your greatness or stood in your way. It silences negativity It's a reminder that you don't really know what you're capable of until you put everything you've got on the line. It makes the impossible feel at least a little more possible. What if is the power and permission to face down your darkest demons, your very worst memories, and accept them as part of your history. If and when you do that, you will be able to use them as fuel to envision the most audacious, outrageous achievement and go get it. We live in a world with a lot of insecure, jealous people. Some of them are our best friends. They are our blood relatives. Failure terrifies them. So does our success. Because when we transcend what we once thought possible, push our limits, and become more, our light reflects off all the walls they've built up around them. Your light enables them to see the contours of their own prison, their own self-limitations. But if they are truly the great people you've always believed them to be, their jealousy will evolve, and soon their imagination might hop its fence, and it will be their turn to change for the better. I hope you're willing to change. You'll feel pain, but if you'll accept it and endure it and callous your mind, you'll reach a point where not even pain can hurt you. There is a catch, however. When you live this way, there is no end to it. That's kind of like a very deep synopsis of this book. Final thoughts. I honestly really loved when I first picked up this book. I picked it up in my own time of need. Someone that I had loved passed away, and I needed something to get me out of a rut, to help me not rot inside of my apartment all day, and to get outside and do something worth living for, something that will inspire me to get moving, even if it's just walking outside and smelling the grass, smelling the flowers. What did you think? If you read the book, let me know how you enjoyed it, some of your favorite takeaways, some of your favorite stories that he tells in this book. If you're interested in reading it, I skipped a lot of the anecdotes that truly depthen the book. I feel like it's one of those things, like this video is helpful to kind of get a good idea of how this book can really move you and push you to do great things, but it's one of those things that you slowly need to read, take notes, and like reflect on and apply them directly to your life. I like how he breaks them down, each chapter, with a challenge, a personal challenge for yourself to complete. That way you hold yourself accountable with your own post-it notes, your own dialogue, your own accountability mirror, your own checklist throughout each phase of the book to complete your own mission. But that's all I have for you guys. If you're interested, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If there's any books that you find interesting that you'd like for me to do a synopsis of, please leave it in the comments below. Until then, I'll catch you next time. Bye.